And welcome to episode 170 of the Actual Astronomy Podcast. I'm Chris, and joining me is Shane. We are amateur astronomers who love looking up at the night sky, and this podcast is for anyone else who likes going out under the stars. How was your week, Shane?
Oh, it was okay. Busy. A little bit of shoveling snow. How was your week?
It was good. Yeah, a little bit of snow has fallen here, and apparently we're supposed to get quite a bit more snow this week, and maybe some freezing rain and other good stuff. So it's kind of unfortunate that we're kind of getting into that. I mean, my street is a skating rink right now, and everything here is kind of covered in a very heavy layer of snow, and it's been cold. It's been like into the minus teens Celsius with the wind, I think.
Yeah, especially in the evenings. Because that's been the other side of this too. We got the snow and then we got some wind. And the good news, though, you get off the side streets, it's not too bad at all. But this is winter. It's likely here to stay. Occasionally, we'll get some weird warming for a week or two where some of this will disappear. But I think it's probably safe to say it's going to get colder before it gets warmer here.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. So sounds like we have some Patreon supporters to thank, I think.
Yeah. Again, we've been on quite the run here lately. So thanks to everybody who is supporting us on Patreon. But we do have two new ones to thank. Kenneth and Dave, thank you very much for supporting us on Patreon. It does mean a lot. It helps us with our expenses. And, Chris and I were just talking prior to this podcast about some potential improvements that we'll make here possibly in the new year. I think that'll be our thing, right? Because you and I, Chris, I think we usually take some time off work around Christmas time.
Yeah.
And, gives us a few free cycles during the day to kind of think about the podcast and put a little more effort into, changing what we do. Like last year, we added the website and see what we do this year.
Yeah, we're going to try some stuff out here over the next month or so, and then consider how we might roll that out in the new year. But there nothing is free, right? There's like small costs to doing all this. So kind of with the support of the listeners, it's definitely going to enable us to pursue some things if we decide to go in those sort of newer directions that the podcasting seems to go in. I mean, I'm a fan of podcasts. I don't know how much you are into podcasts, Shane, but I probably listen to 5 or 6 different podcasts.
Oh, yeah. My library is gigantic of podcasts that I follow. And I'd say per week, I'm usually listening to about, 3 to 4 hours of podcast. Like I no longer listen to just regular radio anymore. It's either, streaming my own music or listening to podcasts if I want to hear people talking.
Yeah, I do listen to. I don't have television, so people should know that. So I don't pay for television, and I don't watch it. I streamed some TV the other night, and my wife came in. And a commercial came on, and she was just like, "What is going on in this house? There's a commercial playing." But anyway, so mostly I just listen to podcasts and the radio. But yeah, I probably listen to about 3 hours a day of podcasts. Actually, it's sort of one of my favorite things, and because of that, and most of them aren't astronomy podcasts. I listen to just a few astronomy podcasts from time to time. But I'm really interested in the podcast medium and doing this podcast and combining it with something I love is definitely really, really fun to do and kind of explore different ways of doing it. Just, as sort of an interest in itself, really.
Yeah. Well, that was my kind of reason behind doing this thing, was just how do you do a podcast and, sort of learning the ins and outs. So anyway,
properly.
Yeah.
It's funny because people find out now that I do a podcast and they're interested. If I just run into somebody and, after we went back to work and people are like, oh yeah, what are you doing? I'm like, how did you make use of your sort of more free time during the pandemic or whatever? And I said, well, actually, started collaborating with a friend on a podcast again. And people are always very interested in this. Oh, I'll check it out. Give me the name of it kind of thing. But when you and I did this before all those years ago, and I would tell people I was doing a podcast, they were like, what are you doing? Like
Yeah.
people had no idea what a
Why?
podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Nobody really understood it. And it was like, well, who's going to listen to that? And why, why would they want that? And
The
it's
answer,
free. What?
the answer is 50 people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it was not a flaming success. But yeah, this has been a lot of fun for sure. Clearly, we're on 170. Okay, so did you get any observing in astronomy this week?
Negative. It was not good this last week. The part of winter here, like you and I have talked about, I think on previous podcasts, is it's either really, really cold at night when it's clear or it's cloudy. And this last week was kind of a combination of both. Like I think
Yeah.
most nights it was cloudy. I think every night it was cloudy,
Yep.
and we also had wind and colder temperatures. I almost went out last night. I think of around 7:30. There was some sucker holes in the clouds, and I could see the moon, but it was windy. I knew I would be fighting the clouds the whole night, and I just I didn't go out. That was enough to sway me to the couch and not do any astronomy, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think that was wise because I looked at I looked out the window and it was cloudy, and I went down and sat downstairs for a short while, actually working on the notes for today's podcast. And I looked at my watch 15 minutes later and it said it was clear. And I'm like, it's not clear. At least it's not clear enough to do astronomy because, maybe there was like a big sucker hole or something that moved over. But and then when I went up like an hour or so later, it was totally cloudy. So I think at one point I saw Jupiter like through the clouds or something. But no, it hasn't been very good at all. And I find like this changeover period is always like, I don't know, it's always like the worst for some reason. It feels very cold, often much, much colder than it actually is. So,
well, cold really is about adaptation. And I think one of the cool things about like just our bodies is the ability to adapt. And right now is that rough period where we're getting used to cooler temperatures and it feels really cold. The kind of paradox of this is that, in a month, these temperatures that we're experiencing now will feel quite warm because we'll be used to much cooler weather. But I agree. I just, this time of the year, I find it challenging to want to go out in the cold, but I don't know. A few daytime walks seem to work, to get me acclimatized, and then astronomy isn't so bad.
Yeah, that's what I've been doing. I've been going out for a couple walks a day kind of thing, and just trying to acclimate, because it is kind of like the hammer comes down, right? Like we went from, I think 5 weeks ago we slept with all the windows open in the house because it was still so warm out, back to just a few weeks ago where I went to the beach one day, and then now we're having daytime highs of, I think one day was like -7 was the daytime high. And it's going to get much, much colder. Now, where I'm from, what we're experiencing now would be the depths of winter. The winter never gets much colder than a daytime high of -7. In fact, I think in the city where I live most of my life was pretty much daytime high in the winter is around 0 or 1 or maybe -1. That'd be very, very average. You can get colder days, but certainly not like we get here, where I think we can have. I think we've had months where the average temperature has not been warmer than -31. I think one year we had a month like that. So definitely it's much colder here, and you definitely have to adapt. And like I went observing with Mike one night, not this weekend, but the weekend before. And I wore my sneakers because it wasn't supposed to go below 0. And I find sometimes my feet get hot when I'm running around doing observing and that sort of thing. And, prefer to wear sneakers anyway when possible. And got out and I was setting up, and it actually ended up being, I think, about 5 or 6 degrees colder than forecast. And that's pretty common here. And so it was supposed to be 3 degrees, and it was really -2 degrees. And that's a pretty significant difference, because at 3, I'm fine. As long as it's above 0, I can wear sneakers and I have no problem. But once it's much below 0, I find my feet start getting cold, and that happens. So I was really kicking myself for not throwing a pair of boots in.
Yeah, that just goes with the transition. So, but here we are. It's wintertime. And the the thing that gets me excited about winter astronomy is just the different constellations, and in particular Orion. There's just so much to look at in there. So that does get me pretty excited for bundling up and going outside to observe some of those things.
Yeah, well, I've been observing Orion for 2 months.
Yeah, that's true. You just have to be up at 4 a.m.
That's right. Yeah, I start getting up in August and taking a look at it, because I know that these nights are not going to be the best nights for looking at Orion. Those nights in August and September are the best nights, in my opinion.
They are. Yeah. If you can stay up that late or wake up that early, that definitely is the time to do it for sure.
Yeah. You're thinking of packing your bags, it looks like.
Well, yeah, I'm still progressing down the Suitcase Observatory path. So just a quick update there. The mount is ready to go. So that is the Borg single arm fork mount. It's a very lightweight mount for smaller telescopes, smaller refractors.
Kenko mount? Is that what it's called?
No. It's Borg. Borg single. Just typing it in here. Single arm fork mount. It's very similar to the Kenko.
Okay. Now, I've never seen one of these in person, but the photos online look like it's sort of a whitish beige, and then it looks like it has like a timer on top or something for adjusting the tension. Is that kind of what it looks like?
Yeah. So it has setting circles on it for the RA and the declination.
Oh, wow.
But it is an alt-az mount. However, like it can be if you put it on a ball head on your tripod, you can turn it into like an EQ mount to use those setting circles. It has slow motion controls as well.
Wow.
So it's got a lot of features on it for a tiny little mount.
Is it plastic?
No, it's all metal.
Is it? Oh, it looked See, I always was like, that thing looks like, but it's beige or something, isn't it?
Well, it comes in two colors. There's like a kind of like an off-white, and then there's an all black one.
Oh, what'd you get?
Well, actually, I have both.
Of course. Why should I ask this stupid question?
Well, and here's why. So there is an explanation for that. I started off with the off-white one. But so if anybody is going down this path, this is really important to know about this mount. And I discovered it through the School of Hard Knocks, which means I bought it and then discovered. The shoe on this mount is not standard for anything. Like, I don't know why Borg made it like this. Like, it doesn't accept any of the like camera dovetails.
Ooh. So it's not like 1 1/4 or 3/16 or whatever the heck they usually are.
No, that part, so to attach it to a tripod, that part is standard.
Okay.
It's the clamp, like the dovetail clamp or the shoe.
Oh, because isn't it? Oh, it's that Arca Swiss.
No.
Oh.
It's not. It's not anything. So here's this. This is again, School of Hard Knocks. So Borg sells an Arca Swiss rail, so I thought, okay, that goes into this mount. And in fact, there's probably 3 versions of this mount. The most current one accepts the Arca Swiss, but the older one, the one that I have, does not. You had to buy a Borg block, like an adapter that went in there, and then you would attach either your Vixen dovetail or whatever you wanted to this little, like, it's a proprietary thing, right? That goes in there. So the mount is really useless without that, because I don't know how you would attach anything to it. So you can buy this adapter from, I think, TS Optics, overseas for us. And to get it here was going to cost me like $150 Canadian, which, for this little piece of metal. And I just didn't want to do that. I thought that was crazy. So I put a want ad out on Canada Astro Buy Sell to see if anybody had this mount and or accessories. And anyway, somebody had the black version with the adapter for a pretty good price, and it came also with another adapter, so I can attach it to like a photographic tripod or like a more robust astronomy tripod with 3/8, I think it's 3/8 inch, screw or bolt or whatever to attach it. So it came with a few extra accessories. It was a really good price. That's the long version of the story as to how I ended up with two of these stupid mounts. But anyway, the mount is ready to go. So the next phase here is the tripod, which is on order. And I don't know when that'll come in, but hopefully within the next month or two. And then that's sort of the last phase of this. And then it's really just figuring out which telescope will be the primary telescope, whether it's my little, one of the 250 millimeters that I have, or if I use the William Optic 61 millimeter Zenith star.
Huh. So I got a couple of questions about it. What's the carrying weight capacity on it? The mount?
It's like 4 kilos or something like that.
What?
I think. Let me just see.
A lot. It says it's only about 1.5 pounds. I'm just Googling this because I heard you refer to getting this mount before, but we've never talked about it.
Mm-hmm. So Borg advertises that it can hold compact telescopes and spotting scopes up to 80 millimeters of aperture.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't think it would handle a very heavy telescope. Triplets, you probably forget it. I'm guessing that like your 60 millimeter tack would probably be the threshold for this thing.
Oh, really? Yeah, I see some people saying 70, 72. Like a lot of the Borg scopes are pretty good. People say like with the Borg 71, there's a 72 millimeter Borg now. They discontinued the 71. They say that's kind of like the ideal. Yeah.
Yeah, like I think it might be a little bit more capable in terms of capacity than the what is that? The MicroStar you have?
Yeah, the MicroStar pocket mount.
Yeah. I think this one might be able to handle a little bit more than that one.
Okay. Yeah, I can put my ADF5 on the MicroStar, but I think that is at the end of its threshold. Yeah. Interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah. So anyway, I have a white one of these if you're interested.
but wait, what would I have to do to get that working?
Well, you'd need to figure out the block for it. I you know what? I think you could probably 3D print that, if you knew somebody that could 3D print properly.
Huh.
Because the block that I have, I think may have been 3D printed. It seems like a real hard plastic, although it has some Borg like badging on it. So who knows? But I think that would probably get you by. That's for sure.
Wow.
And the neat thing. So I also have a Stellar View M1 mount that's a little bit older now. I don't think they make it anymore. And it's similar in terms of size to your. Well, no, it's actually bigger than your MicroStar. But I used to think that was a super lightweight portable mount. But compared to this Borg mount, like it makes the Stellar View M1 look like a monster, like big, heavy, and it's really not. It's just this little Borg mount is super, super light. So yeah, I'm excited to see how all of this works.
Yeah, isn't the M1 like isn't that like the big highway in England? Anyway,
yeah, I think you're right.
Something like that. You've driven on it too.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Well, that's really I'm interested in that mount. I'm interested in so much, but trying to stay focused on what I want to do for a telescope shelter / observatory. Still noodling around every time I think I'm settled on what I might want. Then anyway, gotta see where I go with that. I think before I do too much else. Still waiting on my mount back from Skywatcher. No word this week. I'll send them a note maybe tonight or tomorrow, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, hopefully that comes back soon.
Yeah, hopefully, because I don't really have a mount for my TAC 100 millimeter until it does. Like I can put it on I can put it on I have the TAC Lapides modified, which I like, but that mount only really works on one of it's a pretty big tripod. And so at that point I might as well use my 5-inch Borg, and that's a lot of gear to lug out, like especially if I'm just going in my yard or driveway. So If I'm not going to use that, then I'm just going to use my 60 millimeter. And so that's kind of what I've been doing when I've been going out and playing around with the 50 millimeter too. So, but anyway, yeah. So just kind of waiting on that, and then yeah, still noodling around. I've been reading a book on observatories and all the different things you have to kind of think about for getting one, because like once you set that up, that's it. It's, you've kind of got what you've got at that point. So I'm trying to be a little bit careful in what and how I do that. So yeah. But so are you renovating some wide field eyepieces? What are you doing there?
Well, this is what happens when we don't observe. I start looking at, equipment and gear and all of this kind of stuff. And I don't know why I haven't considered this previously, but like, I have that big 41 millimeter panoptic, and it's a wonderful eyepiece. Other than that, it's quite heavy. And, I'm very curious about the Pentax XW40 that you have. I've looked through that eyepiece of yours many times, and I've always thought it was really good. The one thing I've never really looked for too closely is the field curvature in that. But anyway, I'm thinking of maybe swapping them out, because what I could sell the Panoptic for, I could buy a brand new Pentax XW 40 millimeter and save like 30% of the weight.
Yeah, that in my mind, it's kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah, just I hate field curvature. So if I can see it, I don't want it. But I don't really remember seeing it when I look through that eyepiece. So some people talk about it as, it's really, really pronounced, but I don't know. I've never really noticed it.
Yeah, I mean, well, field curvature is in the telescope. It's not in the eyepiece, and it just depends on if the eyepiece has some sort of correcting characteristics for that, I suppose. But I'd like to try. You can try it out in your scope for sure. Like that would be great. I would definitely recommend doing that at a darker site, of course, right? Because
for sure,
you want to make sure that your eye is at least reasonably dilated. Because I'll tell you, when I was comparing the Masuyama in the city, and then or not necessarily comparing it, I was just using it in the city a few nights, and then I took it out to my dark sky site. It's just it's completely different experience. Like it definitely, these wide field, low power eyepieces, they just work. They're just designed to work, or I guess we're designed to work, under dark skies, so that your exit pupil on the telescope is matching with your dilated pupil. And once you're kind of much closer to that, it definitely is a much different experience. It's easier to use and look through, and you really get a feel for the capabilities. Like, I mean, I have no problem if you want to come and get it and borrow it, but I think it's best if maybe we go out. Because one thing I want to do is I want to try my 100 millimeter on your SkyT mount.
Oh yeah.
I would really like to try that. And that I think that would be interesting, because that's a mount that I was always interested in, and maybe we can just to try it out, because like I said, with my AZ GTI kind of gone away, and it is electronics, a little bit worried if it gets super cold again, and I want to go do some observing with that scope. I thought it would be good to have another LDAS mount that I could take out when it's really cold and not have to worry about the electronics. And plus, that mount really interests me because, like I saw when you had it out, you had multiple scopes kind of set up on it. I think it looks super cool. It's just it's like a bit of a playground. If you're into small telescopes, I think that's a really cool platform to be able to hang 2 or 3 telescopes off of. In the sizes that like we already own. Like I already own a bunch of little telescopes. It would be cool to, for example, take my 80 millimeter out and have that on board when I have the 100 millimeter, things like that. So anyway.
Yeah, it's a great mount for that, and it could easily handle both of those telescopes. Like it handles my Teleview Genesis SDF, which is a very heavy telescope for the size. And then it also handles my 120 millimeter, what is it, f7.5 Skywatcher ED, which is again, that's a big telescope, pushing probably, I don't even know what it would be all loaded up, but probably 12 to 15 pounds is my guess.
Yeah. And I see people putting even larger telescopes on. And one thing I wouldn't mind getting at some point is like a 6-inch f5 achromat. There's a lot of inexpensive ones out. I know I was chatting to somebody this week, and they were saying something like, "Oh well, you're probably not as interested in such scopes because you have some Takahashis or whatever." But that's not true. I mean, I have two Takahashis, which are apochromats, and I have two achromats that I use. I have the 80 f5, I have the 50 f5. I use the 50 f5 a lot, and that's only I think all in that was like a $350 telescope or something. So it's not like a insanely expensive telescope. It's a little 50 millimeter achromat. I have it set up the way I like, and it's sort of a custom job, but at the same time, it's not a super expensive telescope. It's just the way I set it up. And that's probably what I would do with one of these 6-inch f5 achromats as well. That's sort of one thing I'm thinking of as we go down the road, and I'm able to get something set up permanently. So I like the idea of those short, fast 6-inch optics. Yeah, I think that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah. Those 6-inch achromats are something I've been watching too, and considering. I was looking. TS Optics has it's a f5.9, 152 millimeter. That sounds quite good. Like that, it might be a step above a lot of the other 6-inch achromats in terms of glass quality and just general quality. Now it's not as cheap either. Like I think that's like 1,300 euros or something like that.
Yeah, it's 950 euros. I've looked at that one quite a bit too, and it gets great reviews. There's a couple of them that seem to be a little bit better than the others. There's that one that's probably the best of the inexpensive ones, and like you said, it's 152 900 millimeter focal length, which makes it like a 5.9, and it has just slightly better glass than many of the others, but it's still an achromat. It's still going to give you quite a bit of color, but you can control. Now you're getting into the realm where you can control the color on this type of instrument with filters and that sort of thing. And then the other one is the Bresser 152S, and it's a 760 millimeter focal length, but that's not the native focal length. The native focal length is 1,000 or 12. No, yeah, it's somewhere between 1,000 and 1,200. People figure it's just their f8, and then it's got a reducer built into it, and it takes that f8 down to around f5 or maybe just a hair above 760 millimeter focal length. There's some challenges with that, of course, because here you have a telescope that only costs, I don't know, it's like $700 Canadian. And it's got 4 elements in it, and could be problematic if they're not aligned. But generally, people say the newer ones tend to stay aligned, and then you get a little bit of that benefit of having the flatter field and the corrected field using the elements that they've added to it in that f5 package. So you got the color correction probably somewhere around an f7 or an f8. And then you have the field flatness. You don't have as much field curvature inherently in it. And then you've got the field flattener in there. So you have a flat field. I thought maybe that might be a good telescope for my Masayama to live in. And then people even say that telescope can do decent power if you get a good one. So it's a bit of a dice roll. You order it. If you get a good one, you've got a good one. If not, you're probably selling it and going back to the drawing board because you only spent, a few $100 on a 6-inch achromat. So anyway,
it looks like that one, is it still being made? It looks like it's out of stock everywhere, and BH Photo is saying no longer available.
Yeah, I think it is made in limited runs. It was never that popular. So this is a telescope that's sort of been around for a long time. Like it's been around for maybe the better part of 20 years. And it was originally created and distributed by AstroZap, but the designer of this telescope was Glenn Spears here in Canada, but he could never get it. And this is my understanding, and just from what I've read online, and I have had a few conversations with Glenn over the years, but my understanding is that they they could never get it so that the elements lined up. They're having basically optical alignment challenges with it. But I think Bresser solved that. Like the tube is a fairly modern looking tube. And it actually, I think, is the same tube as the Meade AR6. And the guess is that they figured out that the Meade AR6 tube worked best with those elements, and that they've kind of combined them all in that Meade tube, and then just relabeled it under the Bresser brand name with the added elements. There are other ones that have come out, like from Explore Scientific, which are also I'm not going to do my Windows update, are also 152 F5s, but they didn't include those extra elements. So they were just simply like the straight achromat. So they kind of solved the challenge with it by simply removing the correctors there. But anyway, so the newest one probably is the one to go for. But again, they're only selling them in limited quantities. But the reports from people that have had them have been generally positive. It's not. One of the challenges with trying to sort out reviews of these fast refractors is that, one, a lot of the time, the people who get them, and I know somebody who had a 6-inch f5 achromat, but they weren't. They were more like a beginner / intermediate astronomer, and so like they got it, and then of course they take it out and they point it at the moon and they point it at the planets, and sometimes they would hunt deep sky objects, but when people first get into astronomy, they're pointing at those bright objects, and these telescopes don't really work well for that, A. And then B, a lot of the time they're in big cities, these individuals who end up getting them. So sometimes it's difficult to fathom out exactly how those fast achromats would work for their intended purpose, which is dark skies and wide fields. And a lot of time the people that are getting them aren't necessarily using them for those purposes. So you get like this weird kind of mixed bag, and then as well, like, are they star testing them? Like, what are they doing? Like, we know how to star test telescopes, and I don't think that those often do get star tested. And then you hear that some of them were reduced in aperture to increase performance and blah blah blah. So you really have to sort of be careful threading through everything with them.
Yeah, lots to consider. Another telescope that is sort of, again, thinking too much about gear probably because I can't observe right now. Stellar View recently released a new doublet. It's the SVX 127 millimeter Apo. And what really has me intrigued with this one is it has a removable extension between the focuser and the telescope for wide field bino viewing. And then what it does is you don't have to use all of the optical adapters with your bino viewer. So it really maintains like your field of view, but also allows you to control the magnification a lot better, because often to get a bino viewer to focus, you're adding, the equivalent of like a 1.5 to sometimes, over 2 times Barlow, just so the bino viewer will work. So, trying to get a low power wide field view is really difficult. But if you have a telescope like this, it's easily converted so that you can use a bino viewer natively. And then it's really like, you get all of the sort of experience of a single eyepiece, but now you're using the 2 eyes to view. So I'm kind of intrigued by it.
So what is it? It's like a tube that you can remove?
Yeah. Like it looks like it's almost, I think it's similar to like the Takahashi experience where, like there's this tube that screws into the OTA, and then the focuser, I don't know how it attaches, if it screws in or if there's, some sort of tensioner there. And then the focuser attaches to the back of this extension. And then that's how you would just use it mono viewing. And then if you want a bino view, you just remove that tube. I don't know how long it is. It looks probably, I don't know, I'm guessing 6 to 8 inches. And then the focuser would attach directly to the OTA, and you're now ready for a bino viewer.
So which one is it? I'm looking at the Stellar View site.
It's the SVX 127D.
Oh, okay. It's the D. I was looking at the 102.
The 102 doesn't have the bino viewer kind of capability.
Yeah, you could wait and try to find like one of the Borg 125 SDs. They do come up from time to time.
Yeah, I have thought a lot about, a Borg telescope for bino viewing because it's like, as you and I have discussed, Borgs are just extremely modular. You can get all sorts of different sized OTAs, you can combine them, you can remove, portions of them. So essentially you could buy a Borg and then buy the right tube components to get it the right focal length for your bino viewer. So that is a possibility for sure. It just, yeah, it's a little bit of a waiting game to wait for the right one.
Yeah. One thing you could also, you could look for like a used TAC 100 DC like mine, because it has a removable tube in it. I don't know if you know that or not.
How big is that? Like, how long is that portion that's removable? Do you know?
Pretty 3 inches, 2.5 inches, something like that.
That might not be enough, but
I can measure it. It's sitting downstairs.
Yeah. What some people do too, and this, is not for the faint of heart, but some people will chop their telescope tube, for bino viewing. But then the issue is it almost becomes permanent bino viewer unless you have an extension on the back, like the Stellar View. But yeah, I don't know if I'll do this or not. Like, that's kind of wishful thinking at this point anyway.
Yeah, well, the TAC 100 DC comes with this. It's sort of like that hospital gray or green tube that's on the back of the white tube. So you have your regular white telescope tube fuselage or OTA or whatever you want to call it, and then there's a silver ring, and then there's a bit of a step down, and you have this. It's a heavier metal segment, and then you attach your focuser to that, and the whole thing unscrews. I took it all off when I got it just to see how it worked. And then I took the original TAC focuser off, and I put my focuser on that gives me the range that I wanted to have with the telescope. But you can also take that extension off, and then you can just simply, I think you can either screw your focuser right into the main tube, or you get a little adapter to do it. I think adapters are available from a few different sources, or maybe even Takahashi. If it doesn't thread directly on, but I think for some reason you can thread the focuser right on to the back of the silver tube that's on the white fuselage.
Interesting. I'll have to check that out. The other telescope that is always on my list of potential, purchases in the future is the 100 DZ. And one of our listeners, Peter, that we were corresponding with, just ordered one, and I mentioned that's been on my list for a while. But I don't know. I don't know if I'll buy anything anytime soon. The kind of the funny thing, I think, between you and I a little bit is, I've got the wide field 4-inch and you're the wide field lover. So I don't know, maybe we should just trade.
Yeah. I don't know that DC, I gotta say.
Yeah. It's great.
Yeah. I mean, it's like my favorite telescope for many reasons. Because it's the TAC 100 DC is so lightweight, and they do go on sale, which is also a little bit strange. And so they can be picked up used for really quite amazing prices. In a way, I think actually per millimeter of aperture, it's the least expensive Takahashi. And out of all the ones I've looked through, it's the best. So it's kind of a shocking little telescope. Now, one of the reasons why is that it comes with the 1 1/4 focuser, and most of us now wish to use 2-inch focusers with these telescopes. However, there's a very simple and inexpensive solution for this. There's a beta adapter. I forget the number of it, but I think it costs like $60 or $70 or something. It's nothing to add it on, and now you've just converted this relatively inexpensive Takahashi to 2-inch format. And now I had already sort of had a bit of a test drive with my FS60, which is not per millimeter of aperture. I think it's among the more expensive Takahashis. But I think I only paid twice for my 100 millimeter what I paid for the FS60 and brand new from Takahashi. So yeah, I'd have a lot of reservations of getting anything other than the DC 100. The DZ, I hear, is better in some respects, being that I think they use a different mating element. It is an F8 versus F7.4, and it has a sliding dew shield, which gets mixed reviews. And so because of all this, it actually is considerably heavier. So it gets into the realm of a 5-inch. Like it's the same weight as my 5-inch Apocrymat. So I kind of was like, no, even all things being equal, and they're not, the price difference and the weight are two really big things to consider. So you're really getting a telescope that weighs more like a 5-inch class Apocrymat. And then, it's the Takahashi. Maybe it's, and I've even read reviews by people that have owned both, and they say it's maybe a little better, but boy, I think for those two kind of trade-offs, it's pretty tough, because I think it's like $1,000 Canadian more. I think I'd have an awful lot of trouble spending the money for that. But anyway,
yeah, for sure. There's a big price difference there. Like I say, it's on my list. Not sure if I would do it anytime soon or at all. The little FOA 60 has always been on my list too. But again, I don't know if I really need to buy a telescope right now. I think I have probably enough to last me probably the rest of my life. So
yeah, me too. Although, and it's funny because we're not going to have time to read Paul's email, but in his email, he was kind of mentioning that he has some big reflectors and has some small refractors, and then he was listening to the podcast and was a little bit puzzled by our emphasis on the smaller refractors. Although we do observe with Mike, and he has a 12-inch, and I recently had some spectacular views through it. It's an Orion 12-inch f4.9 that he uses the Paracore 2 in. And I actually have, and I've had it for like 20 years, and I've used it a bit. I have a 12-inch f4.8 or 4.85. It's basically the equivalent of Mike's telescope. But I just don't really use it that much, because I like the refractors for their portability and getting out to the dark sky sites. And then here comes Mike. When I observe more than half the time with Mike, here he's showing up with the 12-inch anyway. So we kind of share quite a few views, and that I get that 12-inch experience quite a bit. But I was thinking maybe I should get my 12-inch built into a proper telescope tube so that I can actually use it. So I actually haven't used it probably in 6 or 8 years. So
yeah, time to revitalize that one.
Yeah. So yeah. Did hear from quite a few listeners this week. Just sort of mentioned Paul there, and then was chatting with one of our newer listeners in Brazil, and which is really great, because they were sending me these beautiful photos that they were just taking. I don't know if they were taking them on with a DSLR or their cell phone or what. The photos were spectacular. I think you saw a few of them.
Well, yeah, though. Unless you had some side conversations,
I did.
I did see a couple of them, and that came through the podcast account, and yeah, they were quite nice.
Oh yeah, and so it was actually, when he was sending those, it was like pretty much like not quite a blizzard, but it was really snowing here, and it was like our first snowfall of the year, and I was like, it's snowing. I'm not going to be doing as much astronomy now, and then it was really amazing just to have these spectacularly beautiful, not astronomy photos really, but just beautiful pictures of the Brazilian countryside, which is very different from what I had in my mind what it would look like. I always had heard it was beautiful, and I had known through acquaintances, a couple of people from Brazil at one point when we first moved here, and they had told me some stuff, but I didn't see any photos. And then when I was getting these photos, I was really intrigued, because I guess they have quite a bit of a dry season there, and the astronomy can be pretty decent. And of course, they're in the southern hemisphere, and then as well, they'd actually sent me a screenshot of the moon the other night, and this is really cool. So they were observing the moon. It was totally cloudy here. We weren't doing any astronomy, and our friend Dave Chapman was doing a lunar X observation at the same time. And so when our observer in Brazil sent me the photo, I tweaked it a little, and you could see the lunar X in his photo as well. So I was able to kind of pull that out a little bit more for him and send the image back, which was that was really cool. That was really nice.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we've kind of more or less made our way through the notes today.
Yeah, sort of here and there.
A few side conversations. That's not bad.
Yep.
Good stuff. Do you have anything left to add, Shane?
No, that's all, Chris.
All right. Well, thank you. And thanks everybody for listening.
Thank you everyone for listening, and we hope you enjoyed the show. If you are interested in more information, would like to contact us, or if you would like to support the podcast, check out our website, actualastronomy.com.